What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Hey, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of information concerning the Caribbean and the native population of the Caribbean, and some of the native population of the Caribbean, which is the Tiano people, right? The natives who were the original inhabitants of those Caribbean islands before, they were, as we were told, they are extinct and all this stuff, right? But the truth is, those Native Americans from the Caribbean, who the Europeans like to tell us that they're long gone extinct group of Native Americans, they're still there in the country, living and practicing their traditional spiritual systems, their culture. They're still there. They're very much mixed with the Black African community, very much, right? And their culture continues on. Their culture continue on and insulated and protected within the African culture. So a lot of that African, what you would call voodoo, right? In North America, Carolinas, we call it root work, right? All African traditional spiritual forms of healing, medicine, meditation, worship, all that stuff. We hid their culture within our culture. So their culture is protected within the African diaspora's culture. And so sometimes is not recognized as their own, distinct culture. But in fact, those people are not only still there, but they're thriving as best they can, despite the fact that these European savage barbarians came and genocided them after raping all of their women. The first things these Europeans did, right? They will come to these places with smiles, right? And then the local people will be like, oh, okay, here's these new people. And just like protocol over thousands of years of Native Americans, right? Africans, Southeastern Asians, Northern Asians, Polynesian, Melanesians, Micronesians, when visitors come, we treat them with respect, and we treat them the way we would want to be treated. We treat them with humanity. So when the European sees that they're being treated with humanity, right? They're given all the things that we as human beings are considered valuable, right? What's valuable today? Gold, right? Gold, diamonds, rubies, things that are considered assets, right? To Europeans that we all collectively now decide that are worth something, right? But back then, many people had these rubies, these minerals, these jewels, and they didn't mean as much as they used to, right? Because they weren't either they weren't practical, or they was just a material used to make or sculpt things, right? Other things added value. So when the European would come and see how nice these warriors would be, right? How diplomatic and civil and human they would be, white people were like, damn, these guys are naive. We can take advantage of them. They immediately slip into the let's take advantage of these people situation, right? Let's take advantage of the fact that we landed on shores and these people are nice and kind and welcoming to us. They help us survive, live, eat, thrive, and they trade what we see as valuables for what they see as nothing, right? And then they get greedy, and then they rape, murder, and pillage. They bring those cannons, right? And they shoot from offshore. Europeans have been cowardly shooting, right, otherwise superior warriors to them safely off the coast of every single island. Where do you think most the West Africans or the Indians lived on these islands, right? They lived next to the water. Why? It made sense. You would fish, right? You would establish your village, you would establish your city, your empire next to the coast, right? Because you will be trading with others who are coming, right? You have fishing access to the sea. It makes sense. So that just unfortunately puts most developed nations that developed over thousands of years in the crosshairs of savage barbarians and their cannons, where they can safely, off the coast of anybody's community, rain down mass terror. Kind of the way they do now. How they fly in their jets and they bomb everybody now from a distance, right? It's not really warrior like it's not really, it's not really like dog eat dog in the sense of No, the law of the strongest, only the strongest survive. These are savage cowards who do this from a distance, right? So you can imagine every great African empire, every great Melanesian, Micronesian, Asian, Southeast Asian, Northern empire that was destroyed, all of their capitals were by the coast for the most part. And the Europeans used those cannons and destroyed and killed them. And you're talking about islands and you're talking about cannons that can go 3, 4, 5, 6 miles deep, sometimes longer deep, right? And then after they soften up the coast and kill everybody, right? Imagine all of a sudden things are blowing up around you and you have no conceptual idea what's happening. You know the shock and awe of bombs being dropped on you? No, you don't. But I do, right? Imagine if you never even knew a bomb or cannons existed, and all of a sudden you go from measuring the measurement of a warrior's, how the individual and the team can together coordinate and fight utilizing their own personal strength to defeat the other. Imagine going from that era, which was 99.99% of human era, and 99% of that human era, white people couldn't do shit but kill each other because they couldn't dominate nobody else. When that goddamn gun came, it shocked the world. White people shocked the world with that shit, and that's the only reason they took over. The only superiority they had was the superiority in weaponry, right? And to be able to fight like cowards from a distance, right? But that leads us to the Caribbean, where white people just straight destroy. They not only have they destroyed the Native Americans' history, not only do they disregard the Native Americans' history altogether and pretend like God and God gave them the Western Hemisphere. They pretend like the shit never happened, and then they just out of nowhere say, "Oh yeah, those people, they're extinct." Yeah. They don't even exist. They don't even regard their presence to this day, which is sad. But those people are there. If you go to Trinidad, right, you can see that there are some people in Trinidad who are part of the Caribs and part of the Carib tribe and the other tribe. I forget it because they both are honored by the Caribbeans by certain beverages or whatnot to keep their name in the ethos or whatnot. And it goes for every Caribbean island that had those natives, right? And even though white people imported a bunch of Indians, right, to make a buffer slave class after they had to, give up their Africans, their use of slavery from Africans, they went and got them Indians. So Indians from India has mixed up with the Africans in the Caribbean, and they also have mixed up with the Native Americans who are the original inhabitants of those Caribbean islands, but they are still there, in fact, practicing and trying their best to survive with their small numbers. So I'm going to let one of them speak because, they never get any play. They never get any attention in the media. If black people did not put a flashlight on certain minority groups, those minority groups would never get any attention. That's just the truth. If black people, if we cooperated with Native Americans, right, we just say, we're not going to care about any other group, despite the complicated past that we have, right? We're just going to deal with us, and we're not going to help prop up any other group. Nobody would hear it. White people would love it. We would shut up and stop talking about Native Americans because no one would talk about Native Americans. If black people didn't talk about Native Americans, the whole world wouldn't even know there was a such thing as a Native American because white people would allow that shit to disappear into history, seeing how they spent the better part of 500 years trying systematically to delete these people from existence and delete everything about them, right? That's why I always call it funny how you got these black folks talking about, we Indians, they told us we African to hide us from being Indian. Why the fuck would they do that shit when they was at the exact same time systematically trying to brainwash the Indians and tell them they ain't Indian? Huh? That don't even make no goddamn sense, no way how you say it, right? And there's no benefit to telling some African that he's not African, he's Indian. Especially when common sense says he's African. I mean, only a person who's stupid, right, can't look and see what an African looks. You know what an apple look like? There's no person on this planet that's going to look at an apple and be like, that's an orange. No way, right? There's not a black person on the planet that's going to look at a Chinese person and be like, yeah, he's not Chinese. He's most definitely a Mexican. It's never going to happen. You take a Chinese person, put him in Mexico, like, yeah, that guy's Chinese. Probably not even Chinese. Dude probably from goddamn Tibet and some shit, right? But you're going to call him Chinese anyway. You can clearly identify what a white person look like. You're not going to look at a white person and be like, yeah, that's an Aboriginal Australian right there. I can see it. I got the eye. You're not going to mistake a white person for that. Just like no one's ever going to mistake a black person for a goddamn native Indian. No, they're not. Not the common native inhabitants of North America. Even if there is some dark skin hueish, even if there's some similarities, which there should be, seeing how everybody is our children. Everybody looks like us. Everybody looks like a black person because y'all belong to us, right? But besides that, anybody with common sense can look at a phenotype and say, yeah, that's most definitely an Africoid. For sure, guaranteed, right? So without further ado, let's listen to this lady speak common sense to the modern world, because I'm just glad that in this modern world, people of color and black people are doing our own anthropology. We're doing our own history. We're doing our own. That's the thing. We have to scrape off the era of white exploitation and whitewashing history. There was an era, right, where white scientists who were corrupted by their racism skewed data, right? So it's important that black people, POCs, get involved in these fields. We don't have to rely on their data. We can do the work ourselves. We can go out here with these little goddamn freaking face makeup brushes, and we can spend years brushing the dust off a goddamn rock to discover how old it is. Discover it's some sort of man-made tool or some shit. We can do that. We need our own professionals in all these fields to be telling our stories via scientific discovery. And I'm glad we're moving into an era where that is actually becoming the case. Because now you see more historians like myself and many others on YouTube telling our stories that we've never heard about ourselves. And we have to also highlight other people and their stories, because their stories are a part of our stories. Those Caribbean, those Native American stories are part of our story. We also, as Africans, unwillingly participated in the extinction of the Native Americans, as we were used as weapons of mass destruction to eliminate them. As well as Native Americans were some of those tribes decided they want to be white and they were to participate in white supremacy, and they enslaved us. So we Africans participate in the genocide of the Native Americans, and Native Americans also participated in the enslavement of Africans on very small scales. Well, it wasn't a small scale when Africans ran across North America as Buffalo Soldiers, genociding Native Americans because white people was too scared to do it. You know what I'm saying? So they let the warriors they knew, them Africans, do it for them, while they took all the credit for clearing out the West for them white folks to come in and steal all the gold, resources, and timber and all that shit. Right? But history is complicated. But I'm just glad in the age of media and the ease of the ability to create PowerPoints, the storytelling and all that, making it so we can start getting this real information into the heads of our people, so we can stop listening to this severely whitewashed, non-nutritious history that's been taught in the white Western world. Anyway, tell what you guys think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
So please leave Taino education to Taino people, because we are still here and we deserve to tell our own stories.
This is the end of a message to me from Jasenia, a Taino content creator. She was frustrated because although I do have several videos that point out that the Taino people are still with us today, I released a video about the history of the Taino people using past tense, but I didn't clarify that the Taino people are still here today. If I'm sharing information about the Taino people, it will be in past tense if I'm retelling history. Grammatically, history is told in the past tense. Whether you're reading book after book after book after book about the Taino people, you'll see that it's all in the past tense. The same applies when I'm speaking about the history of Haiti. The Africans were stolen from their homeland and brought to Saint-Domingue, forced into torture, but they were brave, they were courageous, they revolted. I'm using past tense, but the Haitian people are still with us today. And Jasenia knows this to be true because I spent some time looking at some of her historical videos, and she does the same thing, using past tense to describe the history of the Taino people.
Was one of the most powerful caciques on Ajiti. A Taino woman had to sacrifice herself to save her tribe. The ancestors believed that since the clothed ones came in the direction of the sun, that they were sons of the sun.
All this being said, Jasenia is 100% validated in her feelings, in her emotions, and honestly, her feedback. She's an active part of the Tiano community, and although I had grammatical reasons, she's pushing me to be more precise in every single video and to be more sensitive to the very real struggle Tainos are facing to have their existence recognized. So I hear you and I receive the feedback, and I will make even more effort to be more precise. Although I'm thankful for the feedback in the first part of the video, this last part, the clip I just showed you, is problematic. How does Yesenia know that I don't have Taino blood in me? Do you all see the racial undertone? I am not saying that Yesenia is racist. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that she made a racially charged assumption and then proceeded to silence my voice based off of her assumption, not facts. She doesn't know me. Let me be clear. I'm not going to share my ethnic breakdown with the internet. I've seen it weaponized against my Haitian brothers and sisters, and I don't want that negativity. Clearly, I am a proud Afro-Haitian, but Yesenia doesn't know the other ethnicities that are part of my DNA. If you're fighting for the visibility of the Taino people, you've got to fight for all shades, even for the Tainos that look like me. Even if we have 1%, 2%, you can't make assumptions and you can't silence our voices when you assume. It's counterproductive and it's offensive.